Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're cutting straight to the chase because the topic is urgent, it's highly critical, and, well, it has a terrifying echo of some major historical breaches. We are diving deep into MongoBleed. That's the nickname for a high-severity flaw in MongoDB, officially tracked as CVE-2025-14847. And that name, MongoBleed, is very deliberate. It's meant to draw a direct line to the infamous Heartbleed vulnerability. So that should tell you right away just how serious this is. Okay, let's unpack this.
That comparison is spot on, unfortunately, and it really sets the stage for our mission here. This is a crucial vulnerability. It demands immediate attention from really anyone running a self-hosted MongoDB instance. At its core, MongoBleed is an unauthenticated information leak. And we're not talking about a brute force attack or some misconfigured permission. No, this is a mechanism that lets an attacker pull out sensitive data before they even log in. So our deep dive today is focused on how a seemingly small error in data compression can expose credentials and what urgent steps you need to take right now, especially because we're already seeing it exploited in the wild.
Unauthenticated information leak. That phrase, that means the attackers just walk right past the front door. In the database world, that usually means they've found a flaw in some fundamental service that runs before anything else. So as we get into the technicals, why is this a pre-authentication issue? Don't those checks usually happen right away?
They absolutely should, but the problem here is what has to happen before the check. To even understand a connection request, the MongoDB server has to be able to read the packet.
Right.
And if that packet is compressed, which it often is for efficiency, the server has to decompress it first. That whole decompression step happens before the server ever gets to asking, hey, who are you? And do you have the right password?
So that compression handshake is basically the first vulnerable piece of code the server exposes to the outside world.
Precisely. We're talking about a flaw deep inside the MongoDB server's zlib-based network message decompression logic. An attacker, who doesn't need any credentials, sends a specially crafted, malformed, compressed packet. And that's designed to trigger this specific failure.
Okay, let's zoom in on that failure point. For our listeners who really want that code-level insight, can you walk us through the actual mistake? Because this is the real aha moment.
It's a classic memory management error. It's just hidden inside the compression handling. The vulnerability is in the file message compressor's zlib.cpp, and it comes down to incorrect length handling. When the server decompresses the attacker's malformed data, the flawed logic returns the allocated buffer size, not the actual length of the decompressed data.
Whoa, hang on, let me get that straight. So imagine the server sets aside a scratch pad, let's say 1,000 bytes, to hold the decompressed data. But the attacker's message only actually unpacks to, say, 500 bytes of real data. Instead of the code saying, here's 500 bytes, it says, here's 1,000 bytes, just because that's how big the scratch pad was.
That's exactly the mechanism. And the crucial part is what's in the other 500 bytes of that buffer. That uninitialized part contains whatever random data was just sitting in the server's heap memory from previous operations.
And what's sitting in that heap memory? That's where the severity just spikes.
Correct. The attacker is essentially tricking the server into dumping fragments of its own memory. And because this is an active server process, that memory can have pieces of anything. Internal session tokens, bits of credentials from other user connections, maybe internal encryption keys, all sorts of sensitive runtime data that should never, ever leave the server. So this length mismatch tricks the server into sending back the legitimate data plus all that juicy, leaked heap memory. What's fascinating here is we're seeing a massive modern breach caused by one of the oldest bugs in the book, a simple incorrect length calculation.
That distinction, allocated size versus actual data size, it's such a subtle programming mistake, but with just catastrophic security results. It's exactly why the name MongoBleed is so fitting. It's just like Heartbleed, which was also a memory leak from an incorrect length check. Okay, the severity is crystal clear.
It should be. It makes for the perfect target. This isn't some esoteric attack. It's a low-complexity flaw.
Which brings us right to the risk level. High severity, low complexity, and we know it's being exploited. That's the triple threat. Here's where it gets really interesting. How do those things combine to let attackers cause damage so quickly?
They just remove all the friction. There are really 4 things that make MongoBleed a global crisis. First, it's reachable before authentication. Second, it needs 0 user interaction. No clicks, no phishing. The attacker just sends the packet. Third, you can do it remotely over the network. And fourth, the complexity is just so low. Once you know the trick, it's repeatable.
So if I have a MongoDB server sitting on the internet, an attacker can just hit it with a pre-made script and start pulling data. instantly.
Exactly. Any internet-exposed MongoDB server is at immediate critical risk. And the timeline here was just brutal. A working proof of concept exploit was out there circulating shortly before Christmas, and reports of active attacks followed almost immediately. Security teams had basically no grace period.
We should be really clear, though, about who needs to be panicking right now and who can maybe take a breath. You mentioned a key difference in deployment types.
This is vital. If you're running MongoDB Atlas, that's their managed cloud service, you are largely protected. The Atlas instances were automatically patched by the provider. No customer action needed. However, if you are running a self-hosted instance on-prem or in your own cloud setup on AWS, Azure, GCP, wherever, you are 100% responsible for patching, and you are at severe risk until you do.
The fact that Atlas instances were patched so fast really shows the value of a managed service for this kind of critical infrastructure. It takes that burden off you in a crisis.
It really does. And speaking of the software supply chain, the sources also mentioned that this same CVE number, CVE-2025-14847, was also assigned to a related issue in a totally different piece of software, rsync.
Rsync? That seems odd. A database and a file sync tool. What's the connection?
The connection is the library, zlib. This really drives the point home. The flaw isn't just in MongoDB's own code, it's in how MongoDB used the standard zlib library. Because rsync also uses zlib, and it's used everywhere, it faced a potentially similar implementation mistake. Now, exploitation in rsync is unconfirmed, but it's a powerful reminder of the systemic risk when a foundational component is mishandled.
This should probably trigger some audits for any app using zlib for network traffic.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk scope. It sounds bad, but how big is the actual blast radius? We need some numbers to really understand the scale here.
The numbers are staggering. We've got data from major security researchers that just paints a picture of massive exposure. Wiz, for instance, reported that 42% of the cloud environments they monitor have at least one vulnerable MongoDB instance.
42%. That's almost half of all cloud environments with a database that could leak data without a password. And that number includes internal instances too, right? So it's not just public exposure, it's a risk for lateral movement inside a network.
Exactly. And if you look only at public exposure, Sensi's reported seeing over 87,000 potentially vulnerable MongoDB instances worldwide, just sitting there, directly accessible from the internet. That's the target list for attackers right now.
The attack surface is huge. And this isn't just a bug in the latest release, is it? It seems to go back years.
Huh?
Can you just outline the affected versions? Because that really shows the operational headache this is causing.
This is maybe the most painful part. The flaw impacts a massive range of versions, both supported and, unfortunately, end of life. So for anyone managing infrastructure, you need to check immediately for these ranges. It affects versions 8.2.0 through 8.0.2, then versions 8.0.0 through 8.16, versions 7.0 through 7.0.27, 6.0 through 6.0.26, 5.0.0 through 5.0.31, and even 4.4.0 through 4.4.29.
That covers basically every major release stream that's currently supported.
Every single one. And critically, it also affects all legacy end-of-life versions, so v4.2, v4.0, and v3.6. If you're running any of those, they are permanently vulnerable. The only real fix is to upgrade and get off them. The breadth of that list means ops teams might be juggling upgrades across multiple production systems at the same time.
That list really drives home the complexity. Okay, we've got the risk, the mechanism, the scope. Let's get to the most important part, the action plan. What should security teams be doing, like right now, to protect themselves from MongoBleed?
The main action is straightforward. It's non-negotiable. You have to upgrade immediately. Given that it's being actively exploited and it's so easy to do, waiting is just. It's leaving the door wide open.
Okay, so what are the safe versions? What versions do they need to move to?
To be fully patched against MongoBleed, you need to be on one of these: 8.2.3, 8.0.17, 7.0.28, 6.0.27, 5.0.32, or 4.4.30.
Upgrades can take time, though, especially in a big organization. If someone just can't upgrade immediately, is there a temporary fix? A reliable mitigation?
Yes, absolutely. There is a good contingency plan. Since the flaw is specifically in the zlib decompression, the workaround is to just disable zlib compression on the server. If you take zlib out of the equation, you remove the vulnerable code from that pre-authentication path.
And how do they actually do that? Is it a command line flag? A config change?
It's a configuration change. You have to explicitly remove zlib from the list of available compression methods. Depending on your version, it's a setting called either network message compressors or net.compression.compressors. You just make sure zlib isn't in that list.
What about performance? If they disable zlib, are they just stuck without compression, or are there safe alternatives?
You can switch to a safe alternative. You don't have to give up compression entirely. Snappy or Zist are both safe options. Snappy is really fast. Zisty gives you better compression ratios. Using either of those lets you sidestep the vulnerability while you plan out the full version upgrade. Of course, you can also just disable compression completely. You might see a bit more network latency, but it's the safest short-term move.
So, beyond the immediate patch and config change, what are the general best practices teams should be reinforcing here for MongoBleed and, this thing like it?
The ultimate defense is always good network hygiene. Restrict network exposure. That means strong firewall rules, putting your database in private networks, using security groups so that only trusted application servers can even talk to it. If an attacker can't even reach that pre-authentication layer, they can't exploit this. And second, enhance your log monitoring. Be on the lookout for weird connection attempts, malformed packets causing errors, or unexpected crashes. Those could be signs someone is probing your systems. And finally, use this as the final push to get off any of those end-of-life MongoDB versions. They're a ticking time bomb.
This has been a very rapid and, frankly, a vital deep dive. We traced MongoBleed all the way back to a tiny error in zlib decompression logic. So what does this all mean? The core lesson here is that a minor, almost undetectable logic error in a common shared software library, when it's in that sensitive pre-authentication path of a critical database, can lead to massive, unauthenticated data leaks that affect thousands of companies globally.
That's the critical takeaway. And if you connect this back to the broader world of software architecture, it leaves you with a really important thought to carry forward. Given that this specific flaw in correct length handling in zlib caused a global scramble for MongoDB, and it potentially affects other tools like rsync, it raises a huge question about our software supply chain. When we rely so heavily on these shared open-source libraries like zlib for basic functions, how can we be sure that the thousands of developers using them have all implemented the memory handling logic around them correctly? This vulnerability is a really stark reminder that the security of our most critical data can hinge on the correct use of the most basic shared building blocks in the entire ecosystem.
A question that demands you audit every single one of those building blocks you rely on, immediately. Patch now, monitor those logs, and we'll see you next time for the deep dive.